Most people think a ship's life ends quietly. A cargo ship carries containers, an oil tanker moves fuel, a cruise ship carries people across the sea, and when it becomes too old, we imagine it is taken to some clean industrial dock, carefully dismantled by machines. But that is not how it usually works. Because somewhere far away from the ports where these ships once looked powerful, there are beaches where giant vessels are driven straight into the sand. No dry dock, no perfect factory floor, just mud, tides, steel, fire, and thousands of workers cutting the ship piece by piece. At first it sounds simple: a ship is old so it gets recycled. But then one question appears. Why would a $1 billion machine end its life on a beach? And then another question. Why are so many of these ships sent to the same few places in South Asia? And the strangest part is this: sometimes, sending a ship to die on a beach can make more money than dismantling it safely somewhere else. That sounds backward. But in global shipping, backward decisions often make perfect economic sense. And this is where the system starts to reveal itself. A ship is not just a machine. It is a moving piece of global trade. For 20 or 30 years it may carry oil, coal, cars, grain, clothes, steel, phones, furniture, or food. It moves quietly between countries, making modern life feel normal. More than 80% of world trade by volume moves by sea. So when we talk about old ships, we are really talking about the invisible backbone of the global economy. But every ship has a limit. Its engine becomes expensive to maintain, its fuel use becomes inefficient, new environmental rules make it less profitable, insurance becomes harder, repair costs rise, and eventually the ship reaches a strange point. It is worth more dead than alive. Not because it has no value, but because it is made of thousands of tons of steel, copper, machinery, wires, furniture, generators, pipes, and equipment. A dead ship is basically a floating warehouse of materials. So the owner has a choice: keep spending money to operate it, or sell it to someone who wants to cut it apart. But the buyer is not always who you think. And this is where the ship begins its final journey. When a ship owner decides to scrap a vessel, the ship often enters a shadowy middle market. This market is controlled by companies known as cash buyers. Their job is simple but powerful. They buy old ships from owners, then resell them to recycling yards. On paper, this looks like normal business, but in reality, the cash buyer can become a kind of firewall between the ship owner and the final beach. The owner may sell the ship and say, "We no longer control where it goes." Then the cash buyer changes the ship's name, changes its flag, changes its paperwork, and sends it toward the highest paying yard. This matters because different countries have different rules. Some places require proper waste control, worker protection, and expensive recycling systems. Other places are cheaper. Much cheaper. So the old ship begins to change identity near the end of its life. It may sail under a flag it barely used before. It may make one final trip that looks normal from the outside. But the destination is already decided. The beach is waiting. And the reason is not mystery. It is price. But the way that price is created is even more uncomfortable. A clean recycling yard has costs. It needs cranes, concrete floors, waste treatment, protective equipment, trained workers, fire systems, and safe storage for toxic material. All of that costs money. A beaching yard works differently. The ship is driven onto the shore at high tide. When the water pulls back, workers can reach the hull. Then the ship is cut from the outside in, piece by piece, using torches, cables, winches, and human labor. This method is cheaper because the beach itself becomes the workplace. There is no need for a massive dry dock, no expensive lifting system, no fully enclosed industrial site. And because labor is cheaper, the yard can pay more for the ship. That is the strange logic. The less money spent on safety and infrastructure, the more money can be offered to the ship owner. So the beach does not win because it is better. It wins because it can absorb costs that richer systems refuse to carry. The ship owner sees a higher price. The cash buyer sees a margin. The yard sees steel. And the real cost moves somewhere else. Into the sand. Into the water. And into the bodies of workers. but the system still calls it recycling. To understand why these beaches exist, you have to understand steel. A large cargo ship can contain tens of thousands of tons of it. For countries like Bangladesh, India, and Pakistan, this steel is not waste, it is supply. After a ship is cut apart, the steel plates can be sold, melted, reused, or sent into local construction markets. Pipes, cables, furniture, engines, generators, and spare parts can also be sold. So the beach becomes more than a graveyard. It becomes a raw material market. This is why shipbreaking is not only about poor regulation, it is also about demand. Fast-growing economies need affordable steel, builders need material, small industries need parts, workers need jobs, local businesses need activity. One dead ship can feed an entire chain of buyers. But this creates a difficult question. If a dangerous system supports local economies, who has the power to stop it? The shipowner is far away. The consumer never sees it. The steel enters the market and loses its history. By the time it becomes part of a building, a machine, or a workshop, nobody remembers the beach. And that is exactly why the system survives. Ships are built to survive harsh oceans. That means they contain materials that are not simple to remove. Inside an old ship, there may be asbestos, oil sludge, heavy metals, toxic paint, fuel residue, chemicals, batteries, and contaminated insulation. When a ship is recycled properly, these materials must be identified, removed, stored, and treated carefully. But on a beach, the line between workplace and environment becomes thin. Oil can leak into sand, paint dust can spread, toxic pieces can be handled by workers with limited protection. Fires and explosions can happen when fuel vapors remain inside tanks. This is not just an accident problem. It is a system design problem. The beaching method makes control difficult from the beginning. The tide moves in, the mud shifts, the ship breaks unevenly, heavy steel sections fall, workers operate around sharp metal, heat, smoke, and unstable structures. And yet, from the outside, the process can still be described with one clean word. Recycling. That word hides the mess. Because recycling sounds good. It sounds green. It sounds responsible. But when the world's waste is recycled by the poorest workers in the most dangerous conditions, the question changes. Is it still recycling? Or is it just disposal with a better name? For years, the world has known this system is dangerous. International rules exist. The Basel Convention controls the movement of hazardous waste. The Hong Kong Convention was created to improve ship recycling standards. But shipping is hard to regulate because ships are global by design. A ship may be owned in one country, managed in another, insured in another, flagged in another, financed somewhere else, and scrapped on a beach thousands of miles away. Responsibility becomes scattered. Everyone touches the ship, but no one fully owns the ending. This is why rules can look strong on paper but weak in practice. A ship can change flag before its final voyage. A sale can happen through a middle company. A vessel can leave a regulated region as an operational ship, then become waste only after it arrives near the scrapyard. The timing matters. The paperwork matters. The definition of waste matters. And in that small legal space, huge ships move. This is not a loophole by accident. It is a loophole that money knows how to find. So even when new rules arrive, the system adapts. And the beach remains full. From the ship owner's view, the decision can look simple. A safe yard may offer one price. A beaching yard may offer a higher price. For a large ship, that difference can be millions of dollars. Now imagine a company with aging vessels, falling freight rates, rising fuel costs, debt, insurance pressure, and shareholders asking for profit. The final sale becomes a financial decision, not a moral scene on a beach. A spreadsheet does not show the worker standing under the steel plate. It shows dollars per ton. That is why the system feels cold. No single person needs to hate the worker. No one needs to plan the damage directly. The machine works because each player makes one rational decision inside a broken structure. The owner wants the best price. The cash buyer wants profit. The yard wants material. The local market wants cheap steel. The global economy wants shipping to stay cheap. And the viewer far away wants goods to arrive on time. Everyone benefits a little. Someone else pays a lot. This is the hidden system behind the beach. Not chaos. Not madness. A supply chain. And the dead ships are only the most visible part of it. The beach full of dead ships is not separate from the modern world. It is part of it. Every container ship that moves products, every tanker that carries fuel, every bulk carrier that brings raw materials eventually reaches a final question. Who will pay for the end? If the ship is recycled safely, the cost is higher. If it is sent to a beach, the cost is lower for the owner, but higher for workers, communities, and the environment. That is the unfair exchange at the center of the system. The ship spends its life connecting wealthy markets, global companies, and everyday consumers. But when it becomes old, its final burden is often pushed onto places with cheaper labor, weaker enforcement, and urgent demand for steel. So the beach is not just a graveyard. It is a mirror. It shows how global trade handles the things it no longer wants. Quietly. Far away. Behind paperwork. Behind flags. Behind the word recycling. And once you understand that, the image of a dead ship on the sand starts to feel different. It is not just the end of one vessel. It is the final chapter of a much larger system. A system that carried the world's goods for decades. And then left its own weight on someone else's shore.